What's up, audit fans? Amanda here to round up the latest audit news from around the world. Now, this was not the episode I had planned for this week. I'm supposed to be at the CA audit conference in Sydney, and I was going to do some interviews and have some conference highlights. I went to the conference yesterday for day one to be a facilitator for the Foundations of Audit workshop, and I was going to go today to attend some really interesting sessions on fraud detection and effective audit planning. However, Audit Junior had other plans. We've been up all night, he's been really unwell, so I've stayed home with him, but I still wanted to make sure that we have an episode this week. So I'm going to show some conference footage and then get into the news. Let's get into it. Thornton in the UK has announced that they will stop bidding on large listed audits, instead focusing on the public sector audits and audits of small listed firms. The UK audit regulator is already examining the hold the big four firms have on the audit market. Now, GT does have 5 listed firms, but will not add any more to their portfolio. So why the change? A representative said that tenders for audits are expensive, quoting a cost of £300,000 per tender. And the firm comes in second to the big four frequently, so it's not cost effective. The plan is also to continue providing non-audit services to top listed firms. Now, this gives GT a nice clear line of independence, since it's unlikely that they'll be auditing those firms. In the US, the FDIC, acting as a receiver for a bank that failed in 2009, has been awarded a settlement against PwC after they failed to detect a $3 billion fraud involving fake mortgage assets. PwC estimates damages of $306 million, while the FDIC is asking for $625. Either of these figures would be one of the largest payouts for accounting negligence and malpractice. There is even some discussion that this may be the impetus for a change in the fraud requirements for audit, overturning Kingston Cotton Mill's watchdog not a bloodhound stance on fraud. Now, closer to home in Australia, there are some discussions about a potential merger between our 2 largest department stores, Myer and David Jones. Retailers are dropping like flies, with the bankruptcy in the US of Toys R Us last week and 9 West this week, and closures of stores like Harris Scarfe and Oriton here in Australia in 2017. Target in Australia may also be closing their doors due to poor performance, so there are significant business risks facing retailers. From the auditor's perspective, the assessment of going concern is a risky task. There are already significant judgments that must be made when assessing going concern. Add to that increasing uncertainty because of the business environment, and the risk of making an inappropriate assessment increases. Auditors will also have to make comprehensive descriptions of their judgment process in the key audit matters under 701. Now, my next story for this week is a $3 billion fraud at the National Australia Bank. A New South Wales police investigation began when the bank found the fraud in 2017. There appears to have been collusion between a contractor that submitted inflated invoices and an executive at the bank who was approving those invoices and receiving a kickback. Now, fraud can be difficult to detect when there's collusion between parties inside and outside the client. The question hasn't been raised, but might come up in the future: why didn't the auditors detect this fraud? It is a valid question, and the authorities like ASIC may ask the auditor whether they saw any red flags around the approval payments process. If there was a red flag and the audit team did not act, then there is a greater possibility that the auditor was negligent. The Royal Commission into the financial services industry has found significant internal control weaknesses at NAB. There is a valid question about whether these were found by the audit team and were they reported to NAB management. ASA 315 does require us to gather a thorough understanding of a client's internal controls, and 580 does encourage us to communicate control weaknesses with management. If NAB failed to act on those identified weaknesses, then there is the potential for contributory negligence. Now, my final story of the week is the release of the revamped Code of Ethics for Accountants. Woohoo! The International Ethics Standards Board for Accountants released the new code this week, with clearer safeguards for independence as a key feature. I'll pop a link to the code in the description below. So that's all I have for you this week. I'm heading to Melbourne next week to facilitate at the Melbourne version of the audit conference, and I'll be teaching the Foundations of Audit module. So if you're coming to the conference, come and see me and say hi and grab an I Love Audit sticker. I'll try and find some time to snag some interviews and footage of the conference. Have a great week, everybody. Happy audit trails. See you next time.